Earlier this year, I had the privilege to witness a classroom of teenagers envelop a pregnant student with excitement and encouragement. She called during class the day after giving birth to tell us his name, and that both he and she were healthy. This poem reminds me of the moment she called. It was the most beautiful moment of my career. Maybe even my life. I think things could be better than expected. I opened the windows for the first time in months today. Let the new, clean, fresh air into a place grown ugly with soot. I have stretched my body every day for the last week trying to learn to be here. Now, alone. Without equating loneliness with sadness. You see, boredom and loneliness are the well springs of creativity, and the only way to grow is to struggle. I arch my back and then decompress into a childlike posture of head down, butt up. I used to sleep and rest this way. Now, it reminds me of perspectives I used to take. This is for the heartbroken, the downtrodden, the bored, and the lonely. Know that you are more than you have ever imagined, and that if you take a moment to open the windows, you will find that you have the room to stretch. Now is the moment of struggle, and now is the moment on which you'll look back and say, I was strong. I'm still strong. And I've got the art to show it. Hi everybody, I'm Karen Dreidijk. I am 24 years old and I am an English teacher at Chippewa Falls Senior High School. In addition to being an English teacher, I also happen to be not only a slam poetry aficionado, but a slam poetess. I think I've maybe written 3 slam poems in my whole life, but they are really good slam poems. And I happen to have written one at the request of one Miss Crystal Jeswick. She is a creative inspiration, and I think you're all super lucky to have her as a teacher. Go you guys. I'm jealous. But yeah, she asked that I tell you a little bit about the writing of slam poetry as well as the performing of slam poetry. So, writing slam poetry is, in my opinion, completely inspiration-based. There have been moments where I've been on the phone with someone and I just stopped dead in my tracks and I was like, whoa, wait, hold the phone. That is an awesome idea for a slam poem. I'm going to write that down or type it out on my computer, make sure that I get back to that. And that is the moment at which poetry begins, because you hear something beautiful, or maybe a really, really amazing thought runs through your mind, and you just grab hold of it, put it down on a piece of paper, and just write it out. And then you have to kind of work with it. You have to figure out, okay, yeah, that's beautiful. It sounds great. What does it mean? What am I trying to get at? Obviously, there's something within these sounds and words that strikes a chord with me and my humanity, and probably other people's too. That's kind of the point of slam poetry, sharing it. Otherwise, writing also sometimes involves sitting and staring at a computer screen. Just thinking. But it's really hard to write poetry when you don't have like a, oh my goodness, this is so great idea. If you're forced, you're usually going to write something that sucks. So you have to have an inspiration, in my opinion, to write anything that matters. There are people who sit down and write for a set amount of time every day, and they're great at it. I know Bukowski was like that. If you don't know that poet, look him up. He was pretty tough. Otherwise, once you start writing, slam poetry is not as much about rhyme schemes or iambic pentameter. It's really about sounding good. So you have to hear it in your head. Sometimes you have to say the stuff out loud and listen to how it sounds and rework it so that it's poetic in nature. But that doesn't mean rhyming or having a certain rhythm like a hip-hop song. Mostly it just means sounding good to the ears. It should have some flow to it. Slam poetry is kind of a marriage between poetry and hip-hop, and it's an underground thing that came from the people. It isn't something that came from some upper echelon of society and then trickled down. So you want to have that flow. It's good to have some dramatic pauses. It's good to have some crazy emotions that come out. But that's the writing process. When it comes to writing slam poetry, it's inspiration-based. It has to have flow. You have to think that it sounds good. If you don't have any of those three things... Alright, so you have gone out there, you have written your poem, you have said it over and over and over and over and over again in your head, and sometimes maybe out loud, look like you're talking to yourself at your computer, and now you have to perform this poem in front of a bunch of people. Oh my goodness, what are you gonna do? What? Not that. Don't freak out, because people love when people share stories and poetry with them. Anybody who doesn't like those two things, I don't know, doesn't go to movies or listen to music, so they're pretty much dead in our current society. Alright, so now you've calmed down, you're like, alright, perform this, it's gonna be awesome. What do you need to think about in performance? Numero uno, vocals, which you've been doing the whole time that you've been writing your poem. So you're pretty good on this one. 3 things to think about: volume, speed or rate, and then tone. Okay, let's look at volume. Number 1. Being poetic doesn't mean talking really loud and saying what you want to say in a super loud manner. Okay? Volume should be varied. If you have a very intense point in your poem that you want to emphasize, don't always go for loud, because sometimes the best way to bring emphasis to something is to get really quiet. Because when you get really quiet, everybody else leans in. Like, what is she saying? I really want to know. Is this, whoa, whoa. But if you do want to express a build-up of your poem, you want to think volume and rate. If you want to intensify what you're saying and making it such and such a big deal that you're getting louder and louder, and all of a sudden it's this big booming rage coming out of you, great. But you can also do the same thing by slowing it down, making it softer. Maybe adding some articulation to what you're saying. And that does the same thing. And it doesn't make you look like a big crazy poetry reader, you know? Alright, so volume, vocals, rate. Sometimes in order to bring greater intensity to your poem, you want to shift up the rate. You want to have a part that goes rather quickly and moves and has some flow to it, and then you stop. And you say something that's really important. And then you pick it back up and move on with your poem because it sounded so good with the original flow. Okay? You can vary that up. See what works with your words. Listen to your words first. They will tell you more than you think they will. Okay? What we got? Volume, we got rate. Tone. Tone is really just emotion of your voice. Don't sound really bored about your poem or about what you're talking about in front of people, because that just like ruins the whole thing, and like nobody wants to listen to that. So have some pride in what you're saying, mean it, be convinced of it yourself, and that'll make it much easier to express it to other people. Okay, so vocals, done. Got these two. We're gonna talk facial expressions. As you can tell, I'm incredibly facially expressive. I just comes with the territory of being me, I guess. But if you're not naturally facially expressive, or you get up in front of people and your face suddenly turns into this and you don't even know why and you have no idea how to change it, you need to work on that. And you know what? Things like Photo Booth or all that stuff on your fancy phones, great for this, because you can sit and watch yourself do facial expressions. They should fit what you're saying, but I'd say have a lot of them. They show emotion very easily to your audience. Don't overdo them, however. You don't want to be all over the place with your facial expressions and freaking people out, okay? So, no, not too much, but not this, okay? Because this is really boring. This is really hard to watch. I can't even do it for more than a couple of seconds. Vocals, gestures. By gestures, I meant facial expressions. Now we're on to gestures. So, these are another thing. They need to be present. Every time I say gestures, I just want to use my hands a whole bunch, so forgive me. You want to use a lot of these, but you want them to be natural, and you also want some key gestures that are always there in this poem for you, so that when you go back to it, you have a couple of gestures that you've like hung your coat on and been like, okay, I know these are going to happen, and there will be things that fill in the gaps. So if you're going to talk about maybe theoretically taking off that coat and hanging it up on that coat rack nail, maybe you have that in your poem. Maybe you have, you know, this concept that you want to enlighten people with. Maybe that's your move. Maybe that's it. But don't have too many forced gestures, because then it becomes super rehearsed. And slam poetry is a lot more about the performative aspect, the being there now, the being with people and showing them what you got to give, than it is about some well-rehearsed performance. You know, we want raw emotion in slam poetry. So, if you focus on the voice and on the face, and on these things, which are connected to these things, which are connected to the whole rest of this, and then you practice it, I don't know, like 30 times. Yeah, it's good to do that. I'm not joking. 30 times. Good call on that one. You're good to go. You're going to be awesome. You're going to be great. Okay? So go out there, break a leg. Not literally. I'm talking in theater term sense. And who knows, maybe I'll even get to see some of your